السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. إن الحمد لله نحمده ونستعين به ونستغفره ونعوذ بالله من شرور أنفسنا ومن سيئات أعمالنا. من يهده الله فهو المهتد ومن يضلل فلن تجد له وليا مرشدا. وأشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له، وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله، بلغ رسالة وأدى الأمانة ونصح الأمة وكشف الغمة وجاهد في سبيل الله حق جهاده حتى أتاه اليقين، ونحن على ذلك من الشاهدين. ما بعد، فإن أحسن الحديث كتاب الله وخير الهدي هدي سيدنا محمد صلى الله عليه وسلم. ما بعد. My dear brothers and sisters, today we're going to be talking about a very important descriptions of two sides of the equations. One, what does it take to be a student of knowledge? Because this is something that all of us are obligated in one form or another to be, because how are we going to learn this deen without being students, right? And in the same token, the other side of the equation is who are the scholars that we should be following. Because thing is, for a student there is a description, and for a scholar there is also a description, you see. So the question here, because thing is, many people nowadays, we live in this dilemma, like I said in the introduction, in which that many people nowadays follow all sorts of people. Yeah, literally, you just open the TV and you will see scholars that as much as they would give you fatwa with whatever you want, you see. So because this our deen, it is technically the most important things for us. Our deen, it is the most expensive thing for us. So how are we going to take this deen? How are we going to take this deen from individuals who, in the way they behave, in the way they function, people who are not ahl, they're not the owners for it. So my dear brothers, technically speaking, nowadays it is the easiest way, and I say this and I can continue to say this, the easiest way to find the fatwa that fits your desires. The most easiest thing. If you want anything for it to be halal, you will find someone that was going to give you the fatwa for it. But now, my dear brothers and sisters, so it's important for us to beautify ourselves with these descriptions of the student of knowledge, and look for a set of descriptions who describe a true scholar. And so let us start. First of all, what does it take for someone to be a student? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said, وَاتَّقُوا اللَّهَ وَيُعَلِّمُكُمُ اللَّهِ. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, with the very first description of someone who's a true student, is the one who fear Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And once you fear Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, once you cleanse your heart, you will see many things, and many things would open for you, for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to teach you. And the most important aspect, ya ikhwan, for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to enable them, for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to open their chest, they call it, as the scholars, they say taharatun nafs. Taharatun nafs. That your soul, it should be clean. Why is that? Because thing is, nowadays, ya ikhwan, many people nowadays focus so much in all sorts of tahara. We try to learn how to make ablution and cleanse ourselves, and how to, for instance, make sure that we make the right, bath after janaba, and etc. But many of us tend to ignore and put aside the importance for our soul to be clean before anything else. How Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is going to teach you this deen? How Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is going to teach you this deen? Yet your heart is not for it, and you're not anxious. Your heart is not leaning toward it whatsoever. So the very first thing that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wants from you is, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wants from you a clean heart, and you are at least willing to learn this deen, willing to go after it, willing to sacrifice for it. Subhanallah, when we look at, I'm not asking you guys to be like the A'imma, but let's kind of go briefly see some of the examples of the A'imma and what they have done in order for them to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala have given them the deen. For instance, Imam Ahmad ibn Hanbal, may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala be pleased with him, he said, إِنَّهُ لَمْ يَتَزَوَّجْ إِلَّا بَعْدَ الْأَرْبَعِينَ. He did not marry until after the age of 40. Why? Because of his dedication to this deen. Because the fact that he was willing to sacrifice and spend the night so he could learn more. There is an example one time. There is one of the Salaf, his name is Abu Bakr al-Anbari. What happened? One time someone gave him a gift, a servant woman. Okay? So as soon as he saw this woman, what he said, فلما دخلت عليه تفكر في استخراج مسألة فعزبت. He's tried to think about solving one fiqh issue, and as soon as he saw her, his mind was confused. So what happened? The next day he told his people, go sell her, because I don't have time for this. I don't have time to think about luxuries. I don't have time for my brain to think about other things. So my dear respected sisters, at least the minimum thing that you're supposed to be doing is having the anxious. You should be anxious about to look for this deen. Yes, all of us are not going to be scholars. Yes, this is a fact. But ya akhi, what does it take for you to spend 1 hour a day or 20 minutes a day to seriously learn the deen? Whether it was learning the hadith, or learning the fiqh, or learning al-adab, or learning the Quran, the tafsir, or learning the tajweed, or learning also other forms of this deen. Why? Because again, قليل مستمر خير من كثير منقطع. Small but continuous. But if there's something that is big and it's all over the place. Many of us, ya ikhwan, we are willing to go to the movie theaters and spend 2 and 3 hours standing in front of the lines, right? And wasting time left and right. Maybe we might spend an hour outside of the masajid, talking and etc. But when it comes to learning the deen, very few people have that. There are 2 prime characteristics, and this is something that I want you to make sure that you understand. There are 2 prime characteristics of any student of knowledge. And if someone has these 2, alhamdulillah rabbil alameen, he is moving forward. Now, one is the fact that he is mutawadi', in which that he is humble. Because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is not going to give this deen to somebody who's ignorant, who's arrogant. Because if the more you're humble you are, the more you're willing to learn. And the second one is the fact that you are willing to ask. This deen is not given to someone who is shy. So again, if somebody is arrogant, meaning he's going to look at himself, who am I to ask this person? You see? He's not going to learn anything. In the same token, in the other extreme, somebody is shy. He's not going to ask. He's like, he's going to feel, preserved. He's going to feel, somebody would hold him for him to ask anything. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is going to give this deen to someone who is humble. In the same token, someone who is is willing to ask. Ali bin Abi Talib, may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala be pleased with him, he gave us a few descriptions of what the student of knowledge should do. And he said, and when he's dealing with his scholar, he said one of the few things that any student of knowledge should do when he's learning the deen, the very first thing is that he should always try to get close to his teacher. He should always try to sit in front of him. He said, do not wave your hand in front of your teacher. Do not try to make jokes about your teacher. He said, do not try to argue with your teacher so much in a way that is disrespectful. He said, do not continue pressuring your teacher over a certain issue. Do not and he said, do not disclose a secret that he had. Do not respect him in the way that in which that you would do what you would not, for instance, tell him. And we do this quite often. We tell him, "Akhi, you said," another scholar say the opposite of you. How come you say this? It's a way that in a way you are disrespecting your teacher. Because thing is, this, as somebody who's learning anew, starting this path, if I am going to say, going to follow Imam X and Imam Y and Imam Z, I'm going to be confused. I'm going to be all over the place. But as a starter, when you start with following one individual, it's easier for you to follow. It's easier for you to comprehend. Later, after you become, in higher levels, you may be able to say, inshallah, I'm going to be able. Well, you'll be able to kind of give and take between the scholars. Also, it's very important, ya ikhwan, when he is learning this deen, why is he learning it? Are you learning it so you could be a better having a relationship with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, versus because you want to, for other motives that you have? And now we get into the aspect of what is the description of somebody who is a teacher. This is very important, and watch that when we come into learning someone who is a teacher, because this is now here we're talking about a higher level of standard. A teacher, ya ikhwan, is not any individual that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala have given this opportunity to. A teacher, when he's teaching his students, he should be the one who is humble. Why? Because again, you are a murabbi. And this is here what I'm giving you this description, not because one day all of you guys are going to be scholars, because all of us, in one way or another, we are teachers. You are teachers to other new Muslims. You are teachers to your own brothers and sisters. You are teacher to your own children. You see? So, as a teacher, you should be always try to humble yourself when you are giving a lesson. Why is that? Because be thankful to the person in front of you. Because if it wasn't him, you would not be a teacher. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala have given these people in front of you for you to teach them something. And as Ibn Qudamah has said, فَهُمْ كَالَّذِي يَعِيرُ الْأَرْضَ لِمَنْ يَزْرَعُ فِيهَا. It's an example of someone who is giving you a loan of a land. He's giving you a land as a loan, so you can, cultivate it, right? And the same thing, these students who are in front of you, your children, your wives, the people who are around you, you are teaching, are like a land who is in front of you that's willing. You are going to be cultivating. You're going to implant seeds in front of. So if we're going to feel arrogant, if we're going to feel power, I am so and so, no. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala have given you an opportunity for you to teach them, for you to upgrade them, for these people to become better individuals. Also, when someone teaching people, the ikhwan, especially the deen, you are not allowed sometimes, or most of the times, for you to belittle or for you to disgrace the person in front of you, even if they make a mistake. For instance, they said that, let's say one of your students have made a mistake. Okay, does that mean that you make him stand down in front of all of your students? No. Take him aside, talk to him, or you could make ta'reed, in which that I have heard I have seen people commit this kind of sin, and you talk about it, and instead of pinpointing that individual. Also, Nabi sallallahu alayhi wa sallam said, أمرت أن أخاطب الناس على قدر عقولهم. This hadith is da'if, but Ali bin Abi Talib, he always said, خاطبوا الناس على قدر عقولهم. Speak to people based on their level of comprehension. Now, many people, ya ikhwan, miss that upright side to side all the way. Especially when someone like a new Muslim coming into the masjid, or even someone who was misguided and now he is guided. And now people try to throw all sorts of, ya akhi, you should be making sure that you use the miswak and have a short dress. And easy, the guy he does not even know how to pray. And you're throwing all sorts of these things. He's not going to comprehend the higher upper ideas. Yet, and the person, he barely can understand the basics. So if you wanted to teach someone, go with him with the basics, and then you take him one notch at a time. Otherwise, people is going to reject this deen all the way together. And one of the most important aspects when someone is teaching some people the deen, it's better for them to implement whatever they're teaching. How I'm going to tell you not to do the haram, yet I'm doing it myself. As Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said, أَتَأْمُرُونَ النَّاسَ بِالْبِرِّ وَتَنْسَوْنَ أَنفُسَكُمْ وَأَنْتُمْ تَتْلُونَ الْكِتَابَ أَفَلَا تَعْقِلُونَ. Do you order tell the people to do what is wrong, and yet you're doing it yourself? It's illogical. Why is, technically speaking, if you want it from the halal and haram aspect, you're allowed to do that. Like for instance, you will see, for instance, someone who is smoking, and he's telling his kids not to smoke. And he's saying this out of his heart. Like, but when you're a scholar and people see you, or you're a teacher and people see you doing something wrong, and you're telling the people not to do it, people say, well, he's not a role model. You see? So and this is, again, when you are a father, this applies to you 120%. In which, how are you going to tell your kids pray and you don't pray? How are you going to tell your kids lower your gaze, yet you don't lower your gaze? How are you going to tell your kids, for instance, that don't smoke and yet you're smoking? How are you going to tell your kids to come to the masjid yet that you don't come to the masjid and you don't even attend the basic prayers? It's illogical. People is not going to listen to you whatsoever. Now, and that's get to us to what is considered to be who are the scholars of the hereafter versus the scholars of this dunya. Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wasallam said, "Man ta'allama ilman mimman yanbaghi bihi wajha Allah, la yata'allamhu illa liyusib bihi 'ardan min ad-dunya, lam yajid 'urfa al-jannati yawm al-qiyamah." Whoever tried to learn this deen, and all of his intention, so people would look up to him, and he say, "MashaAllah, this guy is so and so," and for him to gain, better levels in this dunya, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala would not even going to make him smell the Jannah in the hereafter. And unfortunately, ikhwan, nowadays, with all due respect, illa man rahima rabbi, many people nowadays, and many people that we tend to look up to, it's to them, this is nothing more than a prestige. It's a prestige. I am so and so, and mashallah, and to them, and subhanallah, if you wanted to invite them into the masjid, you are almost giving them a blank check. We have seen scholars in which that in order for them to come here, and you have to give them at least $6,000-7,000 just for them to for one day. By the way, I am not against a scholar, paying for his dues. Maybe this is their only source of income. But when you're talking about someone, leading the prayer, for instance, during the month of Ramadan, and they're asking for $30,000, it makes you think. It definitely makes you think. When you invite someone for a couple of days, and he is making more than a professional doctor in his hospital, who is maybe spent half of his years spending the night, it makes you really think. Wallahi, it makes us think. When someone for all his trips is VIP, in order for you to go to gain a Hajj package with him, you would have to pay $15,000. Wallahi, it makes you think. Because seriously, all these, it shows us. It's the issue here is not about teaching what about if I don't have the money? What about if I don't have the money? Then I don't get to learn from this individual? Ask yourself that question. So when we see these people, and we see people running after the dunya, it makes us think, what is the intention? I'm not going to mention names, nor I am going, because these things between us and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, because these are intentions. But there are indicators. There are certain indicators that shows us people who have humbled themselves, people who have left this dunya with all of its package, and the only thing they're going after, is teaching the people the deen. We have been in organizations and boards of the masajid in which that we invite many people, and wallah al-azim, they would not even take a penny from you. Why? Versus people who in order for you to invite them, it's almost a good huge amount of money. Certain things that we have to think about. And Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam said, "Man ta'allama al-ilma liyubahi bihi al-ulama, aw yumari bihi al-sufaha." Whoever learn this religion so he be able to debate. MashaAllah, I'm going to bring this person and I'm going to debate. I'm going to destroy him. Or for him to belittle people who are not well learned. أو ليصرف به وجوه الناس إليه فهو في النار. And his intention, so people would look at him and he is the most famous individual, he is in the hellfire. And again, all of us know, and this is nothing new, of the very first 4 people that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala who's going to enter them into the hellfire. It's not the thief. It's not the zani, the person who committed adultery. It is not the one who have killed many people. No. Who's the very first poor people that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala would, the very first people who Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala put them into the hellfire? The person who were doing things not for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And one of them is a scholar who have learned this deen, so people would say, MashaAllah, you are a scholar. So these things we need to think about. The more you see a scholar leaving this dunya and leaving its luxuries, the most likely this person is closer to the truth. In the same token, and we have to be just, that does not mean that scholar should be, he should be a zahid, meaning that he should be, walking around with dirty clothes and he's, driving a 1940 car. No. We're saying, it's not haram for him to drive a nice car. It's not haram for him to wear nice clothes. It's not haram for him to enjoy allowable things. But when a scholar is doing shubuhat, when a scholar is doing doubtful things, when a scholar is driving a Lamborghini, or a scholar who all his flights is in VIP, or a scholar you have to pay $2,200 ticket for you to see him, it makes you think. It definitely going to make you think, and that's why, in the same token, just to balance things out, it's okay for a scholar, because thing is, they're human beings. They have needs, they have things that they need to do. And Sufyan al-Thawri, may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala be pleased with him, what he said? He said, إِنَّ الدَّابَّةَ إِذَا لَمْ تُحْسِنْ إِلَيْهَا فِي الْعَلَفِ لَمْ تَعْمَلْ. Like even like the cattle, if you don't feed it well, it's not going to work. So these people have the right, and they have the right for them to eat well and feed well and dress well and etc. But in the same token, when someone doing it excessively, beyond the limits, and by the way, when we call someone is a musrif, like somebody who is spending money left and right, is based on whose standard? Based on our standard. We as a community know what is expensive and what is not. Seriously, as a community, we just, like for instance, if someone would tell you, I'm going to buy a pair of Jordans, are they cheap shoes? Are they cheap? No, they're not. All of us know that, because it's an expensive pair of shoes. And so the same thing, as a community, we know what is expensive and what is average cost and what is cheap and etc. ومن صفات علماء الآخرة أن يعلموا أن الدين حقيرة وأن الآخرة شريفة. The people who are truly following this deen, the true scholars, they know and they implement the fact that they know this dunya is nothing. And most of what it's waiting for them in the hereafter. I'm going to give you an example to show you how the scholars back then used to think. Okay? And I'm going to inshallah end with this. He said, Shafiq al-Balhi, he was told to him, he said, I was given 8 points. I was given 8 points, and after I learned these 8 points, it made me a true person or a true scholar. He said, الأولى إني نظرت إلى الخالق فإذا كل شخص له محبوب فإذا وصل إلى القبر فرقه محبوبة فجعلت محبوب حسناتي لتكون معي في قبري. He said, this is what he learned. This is scholar. Look what he learned. He said, I learned that each one of us have a lover, and I know once we leave this dunya, we leave our lovers. And the only thing that the true lover that stays with us in the grave are our own good deeds. So I learned to love my good deeds. Smart man. والثانية فإني نظرت إلى قول الله تعالى. I have heard Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said, وَنَهَى النَّفْسَ عَنِ الْهَوَى. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala forbidden this nafs, our own soul, from desires. فجاهدتها على دفع الهوى حتى استقرت على طاعة الله. So what I did after I heard this ayah, I kept pushing myself to leave the desires, and I was able to do so. الثالثة, the third one, فإني رأيت كل من معه شيء له قيمة عنده يحفظه. I have learned that each one, anything that people have, something that is valuable, people tend to keep it. And he said, وسمعت قول الله سبحانه وتعالى ما عندكم من شيء ما عندكم ينفذ وما عند الله باق. And I learned from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that whatever stays with you is going to leave it. But whatever with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, this is what we end up going to keep. So what happened? I donated most of my money. The fourth one, I seen people, run after money and run after, statuses. And I heard Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said, Inna akramakum inda Allahi atqakum. The best of you is the one who have more taqwa. So I worked on my taqwa. The fifth one, I've seen people try to envy each other, over what? Over provision, rizq. But I heard Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said, نحن قسمنا بينكم معيشتكم في الحياة الدنيا. We have already divided your provision among you. So I quit having envy of what's in the hands of people. So this is, ya ikhwan, shows you nothing but how people back then used to think. Yeah, very simple. All of us have read these ayat. All of us have maybe memorized it. But when it comes to implementing them, understanding them and applying them to our own life. The scholar, he said, I've known that people have enemies. And I read Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, Inna shaytana lakum aduwwun fattakhidhuhu. The scholars who are very close to the rulers. This is as soon as someone, Ibn Qudamah says, as soon as someone get himself close and he put himself in a situation, the more likely he's going to go bad. He said that وَإِيَّاكُمْ وَمَوَاقِفِ الْفِتَنِ. Hudayfa, may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, he said, do not put yourself in a place of fitna, because now there is it's catch 22. As a ruler, he's paying for your salary, and yet how are you going to feel to say something that is going to be opposite, or something that is going to he would not like? It's very, 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 very difficult. Sa'id ibn Musayyib, one of the scholars, he said, إذا رأيتم العالم يمشي إلى الأمراء فاحذروا منه. If you see a scholar walking to the leaders, then be aware of him. Leave him. Because again, nowadays you will see the most fatwas, the most crooked fatwas that you see out there are coming from scholars who are closer to the leaders. And the more independent the scholar is, the more the scholar is, he is by his own, the more you see him free. You know what? Put the scholars aside. Put all the scholars aside. Even like, for instance, in a hospital, as a medical physician, when someone gives a lecture about a medicine, the very first thing that they say, the very first thing he have to do when he's giving a presentation, what they have to do? He have to give disclaimers. Are you working for any pharmaceutical companies? And that's why, because of, of course, because that's going to affect the reason why you are giving this lecture. Are you giving this lecture so we could buy this medicine? This is even in the field of science. Put aside the scholars and Islam aside. Even within medicine and other sciences, we as obligated people who's in the field of science, they have to make disclosure. Like, for instance, I was given a grant, for instance, from this pharmaceutical company, who have paid me $1 million, and I'm giving a lecture to advertise for them. Okay, he disclosed. Or I have no disclosures. I have, no one is paying me. Because people now, you have to tell the people in front of you if you have biases or not. You see? The same thing here. Subhanallah, when it comes to Islam, is going to be any different? Of course, no, it's not going to be different, because when someone is, giving the fatwa, and the one, protecting his back is the president or someone else, of course he's going to be biased. For sure he's going to be, most likely he's going to bias. إِلَّا مَنْ رَحِمَ رَبِّي. So therefore, these are some of the things that we need to think about. The last thing I'm going to say is, Ibn Qudamah, may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala be pleased with him, he said, what is the difference between someone who is a true scholar of this dunya, or a scholar of the hereafter. He said the true scholar of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the one when you come to approach him with a fatwa, he's not very quick in giving you the answer. He feels reluctant to give you the answer. One time, let me give you a story. They said that Abdurrahman ibn Layla, one of the Sahaba, he said, أدركت في هذا المسجد 120 من أصحاب رسول الله. In this masjid, I have met 120 Sahabi in this masjid. ما من أحد يسأل عن حديث أو فتوى إلا ود أن أخاه كفاه عن ذلك. He as soon as he's being asked about a fatwa or a hadith, he would tell him, ask your brother, ask my brother. And one after, so 120. And he would no, just you ask this person. And he would delegate it to another person. But nowadays, if you ask someone, mashallah, he is, like a rocket. He would give you the fatwa and without no questions, and he would give you the references too. But again, if something that is already being answered, it's different, But here we're talking about fatwa, a new thing, some stuff that require ijtihad and etc. And with this, ya ikhwan, we have kind of given us descriptions. Again, I'm not asking you to say this alam is munafiq, or this alam is so and so. This is something that, even Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, when he was dealing with the munafiqeen, it is something that he observed, and he did not even release the list of the hypocrites, right? But what happened? The Sahaba kind of had, seen indicators. If Prophet ﷺ did not pray on him, then he must be a munafiq, right? In the same token, when we're dealing with this guys, we're not trying to, again, in the same token, we have to kind of respect people of knowledge. When we're not saying that we should be, because nowadays, in some sects, I would call them, the only thing they do in their life is trying to classify people. He is a munafiq, he is a sururi, he is a ikhwani, he is a salafi, he is super salafi, and this is the only thing they do in their life, But in the same token, this is not the intent. If you are following a scholar and you saw him having these indicators, let's leave him. If you saw some other who have the good indicators, follow him and bite on him with your teeth. And this is someone that you should be, whatever he says, you should take from him bidnillah ta'ala. With this, ya ikhwan, we've talked about in brief, what is the description of the true student of knowledge versus a true scholar of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. If I said anything that is good from Allah, did from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, his prophet, if I said anything appropriate for myself and the shaitan, inshallah, bidnillah ta'ala, next week, we're going to be talking about a very important aspect, which is salah and how to gain the tranquility in salah. Because this is something that here we're not talking about fiqh, like how to pray and what is the fara'id al-salah or wajibat al-salah or sunnah. No, we're not going to be talking about this. This is fiqh. We leave it. It have its book for it. Here we're talking about how to perfect your salah from the spiritual aspect within Allah ta'ala. Stay tuned, and inshallah, hopefully we'll be able to see you next week within Allah ta'ala. Jazakumullah khair, and may Allah reward all of you.